first, I guess we'll introduce ourselves first and then kind of talk about the purpose of the workshop and then have everyone else introduce themselves. But I'm Adele Doperalski. I'm a professorial lecturer in the biology department. I have been here since 2015 now, so I've been here for a little while. And I teach, basically since I've gotten here, probably since the second semester I've gotten here, I've taught what was originally a general education class called Structure and Function of the Human Body. So I've taught that 4 or 5 times now, and we're switching it over to a Habits of Mind for the fall, so it'll also stay kind of in the AU core family, as well as lots of gen ed labs within the biology department.
So hi, morning. I'm Sarah Knight Marvar, and I am also in the biology department, and I've taught actually the same course, Structure and Function of the Human Body. I'm also teaching as part of the new AU core. I've taught our old gen ed biology labs, and then I'm teaching a complex problem class, and we've just sort of started creating a new Habit of Mind course as well. So some science courses to non-majors. So it would be great if we could learn who you are and also why you have chosen to come to this workshop specifically. Like,
what do you want to get out of it?
Yeah, what is your purpose for being here today, and what maybe we have ideas about stuff that we want to work on, but like maybe you could tell us what specifically you're interested in kind of learning from being here today.
So thank you for introducing yourselves. So kind of what we found the purpose of this workshop today is to kind of have a discussion and not just sit here and talk to you guys about what we've done, but kind of have a discussion with everyone about the difficulties that you kind of see in teaching either first-year students or students who haven't really been immersed in a college curriculum before, as well as students who might look at science and say, oh, I can't do this. This is just something that is so foreign to me, I can't do this. And so hopefully we can kind of brainstorm together some ideas to kind of step those students back a little bit and say, look, you actually can do this. This is something you do even in your own major. You do put aspects of the scientific method into thinking about things. You do, have to think about how people get to a final conclusion. So things that, they might be more familiar with, you can kind of like give them that perspective, and hopefully they won't be so scared when they walk into your classroom.
So the first thing that I guess we were thinking, maybe you have some ideas, is like why specifically at a liberal arts university or why at American University, why are we making non-scientists take a science class with a lab? Like why do you think that we are requiring students? Anyone have any ideas? That's one thing that I kind of asked myself before trying to start teaching a course. Like, what's the value in it?
I feel like I ask myself this a lot because I went to an undergrad institution who did not have any distribution requirements or core courses. And actually I preferred, I thought that was better. So I think to me the question is how do I do a good job of teaching this class, even though I don't really agree with the motivation of the university for doing it.
Okay.
But given that it's required, I want to do the best job that I can.
Anyone else have any other ideas as to why we do it?
I think that the students are really scared by science, and so that could be a way, if it was not, they are not obliged to take a course of science, they probably would be never take it.
Yeah,
right.
So maybe this is why it's to try to give it a try for the students, and maybe they are going to be illuminated by it.
Right, so maybe give them an opportunity to try it, and they might love it.
Yeah, exactly.
They might.
So,
and I have had, and I'll be honest, I have had students who've taken my gen ed class and then have come back to me and said, how do I become a biology minor, or how do I, incorporate this? And so it does happen. It does happen. These students have never taken a higher level science. Maybe they haven't taken biology since freshman year of high school, and this is a reminder to them that, oh, wait, I can do this, and it's something that's really interesting. And so, I think that giving them a little taste might be helpful. Yeah.
Anyone else think of why?
I just found out yesterday that this professor of mine that I had like in my early years, this, like when I was fresh out of high school and didn't know what I wanted to do, thought I was going to major in like French or poetry or something like that. And he was one of my biology professors at my first university, and I just found out he died yesterday. But I was thinking about him and how he said this line to me that like changed my whole life. And I just had him for a lab. But I remember him saying, like, I don't know why you don't, like, you know, take this a little more seriously. I see you in here. I see you going through the process. And that's, like, the main thing for me about, like, why we have labs. It's, like, you learn the process. But he said to me, you think like a scientist. And for him to be able to, like, kind of observe me in that scientific setting and encourage me in that way, it really, like, changed my life. No one had ever said anything like that to me. And just, it was the first one I really saw myself as potentially as a scientist. So to me, and yeah, I don't know if I ever would have majored in science other than that. So
I'm going to piggyback off of two comments you made. One is meant to be a little funny, but it's not. It's often to undo what high school science has done or what K through 12 science has done to students. Because I get so many elementary ed majors who say, you know, I ask them as we begin the class to tell me about, or to tell the class about a good science experience they've had and a poor science experience they've had. And they more often come up with bad examples in the K through 12 settings of science, of a chemistry teacher saying, oh, you're not going to do well in this. You know, I only expect you to get a D. You know, when I was a chemistry teacher, I would have parents come to me, I'm so happy they're getting a C in chemistry. And that was the bar. You know, was a C in chemistry, and it's like that should be the bar. And
especially
so,
as a woman, like I felt like my physics class was really growing in high school.
Yeah, and elementary teachers are typically, we have a preponderance of women in the profession. You know, so that's a whole other issue. So it's sad. It's so sad how it speaks to our society, but it's very true. I mean, I've done this work. I mean, the AU is not my first institution. I've done it. You know, I've had so many, particularly the elementary teachers who say they've had such a poor experience. The other thing, I think science for AU is so important because, to your point, the importance of being able to make good, educated decisions.
A good segue into that.
And voting and understanding what well-represented data means when you make a decision. And how that influences our society. So it's a societal issue that we need to be putting out people who are scientifically literate, I think, as a liberal arts institution. They may not be majors, but the general population, the gen ed people should be scientifically literate.
Right,
and we can talk ways to measure that, but just general.
Yeah, scientists who have to do this, but it's actually, you know, the people who have to write it up and things like that. So, so you never know who's sitting in your classroom, right? Like, you kind of figure it out, but in the end, like, you've got students who might communicate science too. So showing them that it's out there is, and how the data gets there is also really, I think, informative for them.
Does anyone else want to add any other
points?
Yeah, points that they feel like we should think about. I mean, you all know that they changed the whole general education program last year. They sort of 2 years ago started rolling it out, and that was I know people trying to think about, are we just making people take a science class to learn scientific fact, or are we trying to teach them skills? And I know that one of the motivations about the sort of the reform was to try to focus on skills rather than just memorizing facts. So we kind of wanted to change sort of tact a little bit, and we want to talk to you guys, or you talk to us, or each other, and then about what are some of the biggest issues that you have have been faced with, or could sort of foresee being faced with when teaching science specifically to non-majors. So I think here we wanted you to I think get into some small groups, 2-3 people. We could do 3 groups of 3. And then brainstorm some of the experiences that you've had or you think that you could come across, and then we can kind of talk about it as a larger group. So I'll just, if you may have to move a little to sort of be able to hear each other. And so just try to share with your neighbours what are some of the biggest issues, and we can talk about those, and then we can try and focus on kind of things that we could do to address those issues or ideas that you have.
Rebecca.
All right, let's come back together and kind of discuss what you guys came up with. Is there anyone who wants to share some of their issues that they see with teaching AU course or non-majors, I guess, in a science setting? Yeah.
Well, in physics and astronomy classes, they don't want to do any math.
That's a problem.
I mean, you can. I will say, in astronomy, I can get away with doing very little math over the course of an entire semester, but certainly in physics, that's
yeah. So it's really trying to engage the students. That that kind of goes with All right. Anything else?
Motivation, how to give students the motivation. Science is not related to daily life. We can read the politics and other things, and we can understand what science is. I can calculate the number, but it doesn't matter to know the science in another part.
Yeah, so
motivation is
getting them motivated about why this is important in their daily life. Yeah, that's a big one. Anything else? Yeah,
Nathan. We kind of touched on like 3 points that were like, so Nathan was saying this feeling sometimes when a student comes in like, I'm only here because I couldn't get into this other class or something like that.
I get that a lot.
They don't really want to be there.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I think we were also talking about how that having the diversity of student preparedness ahead of time, you don't know, like, who are you teaching to? Are you teaching to that student who's like, kind of, I got this, I understand everything you're doing, and then railroad ahead, and while another student may be kind of left behind. And then the last thing was kind of figuring out this the dynamic between, are you going to try to like teach more like traditional methods of like process, or using more like charismatic teaching approaches?
Yeah, definitely the diversity of students is a big thing, because you're getting students from a variety of different majors into one class that isn't their major, and so you have no idea what their background is, and I think that's huge. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they've done AP Biology and they show up and they're like, oh, we did this at high school, and then other times they're like, they have no idea what on earth is going on.
Yeah. Anything else?
Did you want to share any? So I wrote down a couple of things that sort of, I guess, issues that I faced. Engagement, I think we've sort of talked about. What kind of assignments should we use? Like, what's a good assignment for a non-major? We want them to be engaged with the assignment. We want it to be, how many assignments? Are they handing in assignments with just like really, really poor quality? What do you do about that? Attendance. Does anyone have problems with attendance? Do we care? Should we care?
It's a big one, because you'll see sometimes, I taught our Bio 100, which has 120 students in a lecture class, and I had maybe 50 come most of the semester. Yeah, it's
demoralizing.
How large are the non-major classes at AU?
So now, in my structure and function class is only 45, so I think they're capping habits of mind at around 30 to 45. So it's easier than 120, yeah.
I do feel like the class size in the past, and even now at 45, I feel like that just leads to a lot of roadblocks to like other things you could do to engage people. Like 45 is better than 120.
Yeah, 120 is.
So you can't really build a personal relationship with like each person in a class of 45 the way you can with like 20.
Right.
And like you can't do field trips. It's just not practical. Like
feedback.
Like a lot of things that you're like, oh, this would be super fun. It's just the class is too large and cumbersome to do it.
Yeah, but our labs are 15. So if you get those students in lab, then you get to know them a little bit more. But that's, doesn't always happen. The lecture person might not teach any labs. So it really just depends on, you know, like how you get to know us. But yeah, it's really hard with 45 students to really have an engaging, like to try to do active learning things in a class of 45 is not the easiest thing to do.
I guess in our department, almost all of our labs are taught by TAs. They're like supervised by Marvar, which is great, but the actual instructor is someone that often has no teaching experience whatsoever and may not have majored in our field. So, yeah.
Okay, so teaching experience. And I guess as we are actually a bit of an advantage having, like I said, like Adele mentioned, a 15-person lab. I mean, that is a great class. I mean, it's a great opportunity to have just 15 students, 3 hours every week. I mean, that should be where we can have a good experience. I feel like so. In some ways, science has that advantage in having the lab.
But with that said, even in my class of 45, I had labs built into the lectures, even though we didn't have a lecture component until this fall semester, or a lab component until this fall semester. And I would do them with all 45 students. They would just break up into groups and they would fill out worksheets. They would do these worksheets. I mean, I had them analyzing diets, their diets. I had them we did a census lab, so there were stations where they tested all of their senses. I did have I used the general education student assistants. I had 2 of those every semester that would help through those things. And the students really liked that as a break from me lecturing to them all the time, right? So there are ways of doing it and doing it so that it matches up with the lecture so that they get something out of it and they aren't just sitting there all the time. It is hard with 45, but it's also a day that you require them to be in class, so you will have a few check-in days where everyone has to come to class, and if they don't come, they don't get points for that assignment that day. So talking about attendance, like having things where they actually have to come, low-stakes assignments, where if they come and they do it, they get the points. So I think that's a little bit of a motivating factor for students too. Like, oh, if I do this and it's actually kind of fun, then, you know, I get the points for things like that.
We also have a policy in biology, I'm not sure about other departments, that they have to attend lab. If they miss 3 labs, they fail the entire course.
Yeah.
So we actually have very good attendance at the labs. The lecture, if you've got a large class, it's a different thing. And if you don't come to class, you're not going to be engaged. You're not going to have any friends in the class. You know, it's harder and harder and harder to sort of get the best experience if you're not attending.
And you can kind of, like, on the first day really harp on that a little bit, you know, like I expect you to be in lecture every day. What I say is more important than what's on those slides in many cases. So, you know, learning the narrative of what I'm talking about, and you're not going to get that if you're not here. So, yeah.
How do you enroll the student in the lab attendance in biology when they want to leave earlier or they arrive late? Because for the arriving late, we have like a 10-minute policy.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes, because I stay in the lab a lot with the TA, especially if they like it's a first experience, the student just pack their stuff and they leave.
Well, so we have a quiz at the beginning of every lab, so people usually aren't late. I mean, because that's over the course of the semester, it's worth 10% of their lab grade, I believe. Also, students sometimes don't do the maths and work out actually how little it's worth, but they still think, oh, I'm going to miss the quiz, you know. So usually they're there on time.
Because they don't make up the quiz if they miss it.
Yeah.
That's like if you come in 5 minutes late, you get 5 minutes to take the quiz. You don't get a full 10 minutes.
I see.
So that's a motivator.
And for the leaving early?
Leaving early, it depends on the lab, but often students, if they've completed the lab and they're, you know, they work in groups, pairs usually. If they finish, then they can leave.
No, that's also for us, but I mean like that there are students that they just don't care and they leave.
Well,
I have an experience.
Yeah, we have a worksheet that we usually turn in at the end. We call them cash outs. Like they have to hand that in completed on the way out the door. And if they don't do that or they don't complete it fully, then they don't get the points.
And sometimes it's class data. Like we'll put everyone's data, let's say, on the. You know, so they have to wait till everyone's finished the
So maybe I
experiment.
have to change that because sometimes the TA have the possibility to ask for this document like after 3 days or something. So maybe I have to do like
on the
and
day.
at the end of the lab you have to do okay.
Yep.
There's a thing we use in K through 12 called an exit ticket. For high school students, oftentimes they have to do their exit ticket before they leave class, so they have to demonstrate what they did in class.
Yep.
And that works pretty well.
That's basically
Something-
the same thing that we
like a
do.
half page,
Yep.
you know, that they have to fill out, so it forces
And
them to
you don't
stay.
leave like possibility to return later for the
Nope.
person that, no.
Nope, if it's not turned in at the end of class or you forget to turn it in, then that's too bad. They're usually about 10 to 15 points, not a huge deal, but it's still points, you know, so and it all adds up in the end. And that's kind of talking about assignments, quality and quantity of assignments. Lots of low stakes assignments that mean something for these students are really good. They get very intimidated when your entire class is exams, right? They're like, I can't memorize all this stuff. I don't know all this stuff. So if you do things that lead up to the exams, little assignments where they know they can get the points if they do the work, it motivates them a little bit more. And then they get to the exam and they're like, oh, wait, we did an assignment on this. I remember this. And they can pick up on little things. So quality and quantity, there has to be a purpose. They'll harp you if there's no purpose. They will be like, this is a waste of my time. Why am I doing this? So there has to be a purpose to the assignment. But if you do little assignments along the way, then building up to not having too many exams that are, you know, exams should not be so much of their grade as in these kinds of classes. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I think what it would be useful is if you spend a few minutes. So we all have issues that we face, or can think hypothetically issues that we could face. Could you think about and spend a few minutes with your group, or you may as well stay in your same groups, about what things you have tried, maybe they failed, maybe they've succeeded, things that you could do to address these issues: motivation, attendance, teaching experience with the TA, what kind of assignments you have found. Well, we're going to talk about that next, actually, assignments that you found work.
In a couple minutes. So, yeah.
And how do you know that your class is working as well? Like, what have you done to sort of assess the success of your attendance policy? That would be like an easy thing to do. But, how do you know that they're learning anything? How do you know that, how they feel about each step? And so take a few minutes, talk with your group about how you think. Maybe it's an idea you just thought of just now, but how can we address some of these issues with teaching science to non-majors that we've talked about.
So did anyone come up with any good, interesting ideas on how to kind of engage students or change around assignments or anything interesting?
Or address attendance.
Address anything like that.
I can share some of the things that we've done in biology, but
yeah.
Do you want to start some of the...
I don't know. I've done a lot of things. I think, I guess comparing my few recent years of teaching to when I began, I've reduced the number of assignments, reduced the complexity of grading. Because I feel like the students tend to value rapid feedback more than detailed feedback.
Yes.
So I have sort of changed the assignments so that they can be graded very rapidly, a couple minutes per assignment rather than sitting there 10, 15 minutes for each one. And I feel like I'm naturally a little bit more of a subdued and introverted person, and I feel like I put a lot of effort. Because the problem is the students don't want to be here in many cases, which is different. So you have to make them like something they don't like, and so I feel like I put a lot of effort into being more engaging. I met with this professor from the theater department. I got taped by CTRL. It's you have to entertain them and you have to psychologically manipulate them, and put a lot of effort into learning how to do those things.
Do you have any tips?
Well, so one thing I was telling them is I think a lot of students, which is a little bit weird to me, a lot of the students they're very nice, eager to please people. They may not like your class, but they're decent human beings. And so I think if you make them feel like you care personally about them being there and them doing things, and you will feel sad and disappointed if those things don't happen, for a fairly large fraction of students, that pushes them.
Yep, it does. And I totally agree with you. There's one thing that I've tried to do as much as I can remember is that since my classes inherently like try to quiz me on every disease, virus, or whatever out there, and I'm not an MD, I don't know the answers to a lot of some of their obscure questions. And so I try to write them down as much as I can remember after class, and I answer them at the beginning of the next class. And the students, I get comments on that every year. Like, she actually cares to answer our questions. And so that's what keeps them coming, like, yes, I do care, like, about the questions you're asking. I might not know an answer. I'm honest.
Yeah.
But that's something, yes, so something like that.
Also, as much as you can, like, aligning your teaching and your assessment is important.
Yeah.
More so than with majors, because I feel like majors are interested in just learning. They have the general sense that if they learn this, it will help them. But I feel like here they I feel like you have to think like, what behavior is your assessment motivating, and try to make your assessment motivate the behavior you want. Like, I started giving, like, whenever I really want them to read something, I have a short graded assignment, because they don't read things on time without a graded assignment. And they like getting credit for what they've done, so I just started doing it, and it resulted in like probably like at least like 2/3, 3/4 reading the stuff before class, as opposed to like maybe 10%. I didn't like it; just seemed like they did. Like there were a lot fewer like blank silent stares.
So giving them credit for doing the reading.
Yeah, but more like thinking like, how does this policy shape? Like, what incentives is this providing?
Right.
I guess I think about that with like everything I assign is like, what is the incentive structure of this, and what do I want to see happen? And so I guess I think of the assessments often less as like exactly assessments and more of motivators.
Right.
Yep, that's a good. I like that. Yeah. Anyone else have anything? Other ideas, thoughts? I think we just came up with.
Do you want to share what you talked about?
We talked about like how using Blackboard is like kind of a structure to allow them, like, yes, have things to encourage them to come to class, but the like Blackboard can kind of allow them the structure to kind of like pin their learning on, that where you like have the PowerPoint there, and you have an outside thing that they can reference, but then also like Nathan was saying, also like putting leaving like a breadcrumb trail during your lecture. Say like, this is going to be important, I'm going to emphasize this, and so if they don't come to class, they're not getting these clues about what will be on the exam. And one thing I'm going to try this semester, I don't know if it's going to work, but I've read about it as being an important teaching tool, is I'm going to give them like a version of an exam on the first day of class, and like, kind of let them engage with that for a little while to think about how I will be asking them to think about the topics we're covering. So they know that it's got to be beyond a superficial understanding of like this definition or something like that. That they'll have to understand processes.
To make them feel like they know exactly how they're going to be assessed at the end, so they're not surprised, and what thinking you're trying to get them to.
Yeah, which I guess kind of gets back to the transparency idea.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
I feel like another thing that is kind of along those lines is trying to connect to the students, like not necessarily as scientists, but like I try to show like TED Talks.
I do TED Talks a lot.
Of scientists that look like all different people, like scientists from different countries, scientists of different races. Like if there's a gay scientist and I know they're gay, I like point that out, and like just so that they see like, okay, maybe I'm not super into science, but there's like scientists that are like me in other ways.
Yeah.
I use TED Talks a lot, actually. I love them. The first day I usually play a TED Talk about a woman whose kids, she found out they had this genetic disorder that no one knew anything about, and she's not a scientist, and her husband they ran gels, they sequenced the gene, and they were citizen scientists, they did this whole thing, and it's really interesting. And so like these are people, just like them, who knew nothing about science, and yet they had to jump in. Right? So what would you do in that situation? So I use TED Talks a lot. I have a couple others that I pull out throughout the semester too. But again, yes, diversity in your TED Talks. I have that as well. Like, or who is actually talking. But I think that's important for these students. You want to?
Yeah. So
I was just going to give, just a couple. I mean, this is just a quick thing that I thought of, like just little pointers that I do throughout the course. So we've talked about how these students come in at all different levels. So be honest up front. Say, I'm going to start from the very beginning. I'm going to go through the basics. We all need to be on the same level before we kind of jump into this other stuff. So for those who might have know the organelles of the cell when they're coming in, just say it'll be a little bit of a review for you, but be honest, be upfront with them, tell them how you're going to start and then how you're going to weave everything throughout the course. I weave a theme throughout my course that I keep going back to. So talking about how they know exam questions or things like that, I have a couple of the same questions on each exam. So they know what's coming on some of those questions. So when it's the human body, I talk about how we stay at homeostasis and how do all the body systems work together to keep us in that healthy state. And I harp on that throughout the entirety of the semester. And at the end of each lecture, I'm like, okay, think about the other systems that we learned. How do they add into this system that we just learned about? And every exam has a question on choose 3 systems. How do they work together, to keep your body at homeostasis, things like that. So they should know that question is coming. That's an easy 6-8 points for them, right? They should prepare it ahead of time. And then it keeps them thinking, engaged with all the material throughout the course without making it a cumulative course, like a cumulative test at the end. It kind of tricks them into making it cumulative when it's really not always. Let the students have a say. If there's any days where you are lost for a topic, ask them what they want to learn about. And then they have a stake in it. This is something they want to learn about. It's something that they're interested in. So polling the class is really good about kind of learning what they want to learn, what they want to get out of this course. And then you can make it interactive. I use clickers in my class, so I do little quiz questions throughout, things to think about, like if this person has this blood type, well, who can they match up to? Things like that. So that I just taught it. Is it sinking in? Do we need to go back? So I use clickers a lot. I use case studies a lot at the end of each. So I'll so-and-so doesn't feel well. This might be a symptom. What did we just learn about that could be causing that symptom? I try to do that at the end of about 50% of my lectures to try to bring that together too. And so a lot of my exam questions mirror things like that. So-and-so had a head injury and his personality changed. Which lobe of the brain might be, things like that. So they're not surprised in the end, really. I think that's I did that kind of quickly, but because we're going to move on a little bit. But does anyone have anything else to say about what I just talked about? Or any thoughts?
So the last thing that we wanted to talk about were assignments. And I know that Adele sent you an email asking you what, if you had an example of an assignment that you have used that was awful or that was amazing, or something that maybe started off awful and became amazing in multiple iterations. I know that's happened, well, never amazing, but so I want to give you a few minutes to talk about, we'll do this again in small groups, so we'll just give you a few minutes, assignments that you have used in a sort of AU Core or General Education Science class. Maybe things that didn't work or things that did work with that assignment, and we could kind of get some ideas from each other as to sort of what things seem to sort of resonate with the non-major student. So I'll give you a few minutes just to, and here are some sort of things. Why didn't it work if something didn't work, and then what could have improved it, and then we can share those ideas as well. So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, you can think about kind of what we've been talking about throughout and add in things that we've been talking about.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your assignment ideas. Let's talk about some of your ideas for assignments that... Does anyone have an example of assignment that just didn't work, or do you focus more on ideas of good assignments?
You want to share?
Yeah. Nathan.
Talked about a lot of things, but one thing, especially with the gen ed or these core classes or the non-major classes, one thing that I like to do is have an assignment based on current events, something that's happening in the mainstream media that they've heard about, that maybe they want to learn more about in terms of the science behind it. Like in intro bio, as an example, we talked about genetic testing. You take 23andMe, you split the tube, you send it off. What is actually happening there? what are you really signing away? In China, they've edited genomes of babies to make them resistant to HIV. Everybody's heard that story, but when we talk about what does it mean? What does genome editing mean? What's the science behind that? And then I think that helps maintain their interest and motivate them to learn a little bit more.
Yes,
rather than just
make it feel closer to their lives. They may have already heard something about it, but to understand the background. Yeah, that's a good idea. We certainly use that in biology, in my complex problem class. I did that, and the structure and function class.
Yeah, we use it too. I make the students find popular press articles and post it on Blackboard. And if I mention the article in class, they get 3 bonus points.
So what assignment? So you get them to find an article, or what's?
For that, usually I provide them a couple of not hard science articles, but kind of like popular science articles.
Yeah.
For them to read it. They have to do a little writing assignment. What some questions I ask about it, and then those are the classes where we have a discussion-based class.
Okay.
It is an intro bio class, so it is a lot of me lecturing, but I kind of break it up with 2 or 3 of these current events assignments during the semester. And those are the ones they like the best,
Right.
obviously. But I feel like I have to teach them intro bio.
Yeah,
right.
We can't just have fun with every single lecture, but that's what works really well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other ideas?
One thing that I struggled with, we talked about at the end, was that in my class in the spring, the students really wanted a study guide, and they expected a study guide.
Yeah.
That it was a struggle throughout the semester. It started off on the wrong foot because I had a TA for the course, like a GFAC student, and she really wanted to create a study guide for them, and then it didn't end up like completely aligning. It was like a little more superficial than what I asked on the exam. It was just kind of like, do you know these X, Y, Z, this list of things, whereas the exam was much more process-oriented and kind of problem-solving. And then students were upset that it didn't match, and then they expected a study guide. And so I'm curious, do other people use study guides? I feel like at this level that they should create their own.
So
I didn't like that either.
I don't. When I first started teaching, it was at Louisiana State University, and one of the other faculty members there was a physics education. His PhD was in physics education. And he also knew a lot of the school teachers in the area from high schools. And what he sort of pieced together from talking to his students and then talking to some of the high school teachers is that what students think a study guide is the test. Where the study guide says, the phases of the moon are caused by, and there is a sentence that is whatever the teacher, and then the test says, what causes the phases of the moon? And you regurgitate that sentence. So the students, I think even if you gave them a study guide, what you probably want to provide is not what they're expecting it to be, and they're probably still going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of students come in thinking a study guide is the test in statement form rather than in question.
And they just have to memorize it or write it on their hand.
Exactly. And so I think a study guide might be a no-win situation in that sense.
They're going to be unhappy. Yeah.
So that's why I was thinking about incorporating this, like, here's the exam that I gave, here's a version of the exam on the first day so you can see the way I'm thinking about the material, but this is not a comprehensive list of all the things, and these questions won't necessarily be on it.
Yeah. So one thing I've done, I tried doing this last semester, I have no idea how ultimately helpful it actually was. But at the end of each of my set of lecture slides, I've started creating a key point slide, which is mostly just a reminder of the big picture items that we talked about. It has very little information beyond saying, we learned about the relationship between speed and how light from a moving star is shifted in color. So it's more like I said, the kind of the big picture idea is to give them a starting point of where to study or what to think about for that topic. But it by no means replaces them actually thinking about what's going on.
It's almost like statements they could turn into a question if they thought about it and then answer that question themselves.
Like a concept, rather, that they should understand.
That's interesting.
Did you want to?
I struggle with the same thing where they say, what do I need to study for the test?
I hate that.
Every single time.
I just say everything.
I don't know.
I mean, why would I talk about it if it's not important? I mean, it's kind of, yeah.
And so I still struggle with that. Like, I don't know what to do. Maybe, and I give them briefing at the end of this is what we see, and they have a formula sheet with everything that we see. So I still don't know how to handle that. And they get really mad.
They do. Focus on the test. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, it's a lot of material, so. And I don't know how other people handle that. How they do it.
That's a difficult question. I mean, that's hard. It really is, because it is a no-win situation. You know, it really.
It's like when a student comes up to you after taking this class, did I miss anything?
Yes.
No. Sat here and did nothing.
Exactly.
You missed absolutely nothing.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. It's like they expect you to hand them the exam, and you're not going to do that. And so, I mean, maybe just be upfront at the very beginning of class. Say, hey, you know, the important information is on my lecture slides or what I say in class. Anything that is there or what I say is fair game for the exams, so pay attention, take notes. I do give Blackboard quizzes that open at the end of class on Friday and close before class on Tuesday. They are open note, so they can know whether they've taken the right notes or they have my right thought process. So they can use whatever they want. They can't use each other. They can just use whatever notes they've taken. They are timed, though, so they don't have all day to do it. They have 20 minutes to answer like 10 questions. So it's easy points if they take the right notes, and it kind of helps them think that these are the questions that I could possibly ask on an exam. Something. This is my thought process behind some of these concepts. So maybe something like that will help if you say, hey, I'm giving you some examples of questions in these quizzes or some examples of what I'm thinking about in these quizzes. See if you're taking the right notes. See if your notes are sufficient for you. You know?
I gave them weekly quizzes with all the notes, and I gave them all the lectures. They still complain about it.
Right, and I mean, there's only so much you can do. Right? Really,
And an issue that I was discussing here is that because I teach a large gen ed class for physics, for non-majors, I use online homework systems, like Master in Physics, that they don't like.
Okay.
Because the way you type an answer, it has to be very specific, and if you don't type it the right way, the system takes points off, and things like that, so they don't like it much. I like it because it gives me the statistics of right away, which probably was the hardest. It gives you all the statistics and everything. I try to solve that glitch of the fact that sometimes mastering physics takes points off by giving them 10% extra no matter what in the homework. But they still think that, if I made a mistake, you took points off, even though they're doing more than 100% of the homework at the end. They don't understand that statistics.
Right. No, they don't understand how grades work.
Yeah, they don't know how.
It's definitely something that you have to really walk them through.
So I wonder what people do for large classes with homework assignments. Do you use online systems too? They also cheat, so I don't know how to.
Well, I know that in Bio 100, which used to be a very large class, it actually now is being split up into smaller sections. But I know they used to do open book online exams.
Yeah, they did Blackboard exams.
Useful those really are.
I mean,
because you can't grade 100 tests physically.
And for homework, the same thing. That's why I use the online system. Because, 90 students, and every week you grade 90.
Although all my high school teacher friends are like, why can't you grade that many exams or that many papers? I'm like, I know.
But to your point, you want the homework to lead into the exam. So students who are genuinely making the effort on the homework, the reflection of those efforts would appear on their exam.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So the kids who are going to cheat are not going to have that knowledge going into the exam. So you could do the homework almost like a low stakes completion, and then build that knowledge. That you're talking about with the quiz over the weekend, right? That the students who really struggle with the material to understand if you understand their thinking.
Right.
If they understand your thinking, get credit on that.
Right. And mostly, and I let them drop one. So usually they forget once throughout the they're fine.
I've got a high schooler at home getting ready for college. They do cheat. I hear him talking with his friends, and they do these study groups, and I sit there and I go, that's bordering on like dishonest.
So we have like I think we have 1 minute.
These are our thoughts on what we at least maybe do in a few courses in biology, or things that we feel like sort of work for AU core science classes. So using a number of low-stake assignments, but that are not busy work, that have a purpose towards kind of a specific learning outcome, or something that we think is important. And use a variety of different types of questions. Try to emphasize critical thinking versus memorization. So try to sort of focus on getting them to develop skills rather than just memorize facts. And then do sort of large projects. So I was going to mention just a couple of assignments that we have in the general biology class. One is the students actually enjoy, and actually surprisingly, the majority actually do it. They go to the zoo, and it's surprising how many students have actually never been to the zoo, even though you can walk there from here. Well, it's a bit far away.
They Uber.
They don't walk. So they have to go to the zoo, and we make them observe 2 animals of their choice from a list, endangered species, make observations, learn what they can about the animal from being at the zoo. They can go with friends, they can go with... we used to take them, the TA used to take them, now we don't. I don't know why that changed. And then they make a poster. And then we have a sort of a poster session in our last lab class. And they all visit each other's posters, and they'll sort of talk about the data that they collected, what they learned about, why is the species endangered, what could be done, how much would it cost for them, to the preservation of this animal, is it worth it? So that's one of the assignments that we do. And then there was another one that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so what I basically do is I have them at the beginning of class come up with topics that just happen in the world that they're interested in. Like I had, and then they put together an infographic at the end of the semester with those topics, like climate change and your health. The one big one I remember is postpartum, like pregnancy issues. Why in the United States do we have so many mothers dying after giving birth? And the students came to me like, we read about Serena Williams and we want to do this. And I'm like, perfect, great idea. And so it's been an amazing, and they'll even break down the demographics of DC when they talk about this, and it's really cool. So make them really excited about these things, really. And so basically that's kind of make the students excited. Catch them at the very beginning, say this is going to be a lot of fun. You're going to, make sure that they get excited about it. And if you're excited about it, they won't be as intimidated, and they'll be excited about it. So I think that's about it. Hope you guys had fun, learned something.